Good evening, everybody. This is Joe from Middle Ground Mike. I hope this catches everybody doing well. It's Tuesday morning quick hit news. So, according to Benny Johnson, he had just talked to some of the top law enforcement officials, federal law enforcement, and the change in, I guess, the approach has been crazy on the Epstein situation. And I guess, some people inside the MAGA circle and inside the administration have been kind of pushing for special counsels on the Epstein findings. So Benny Johnson credited Charlie Kirk with, a drastic change after they were at the Turning Point conference. And they put a lot of pressure on the administration to, really reverse course. They're saying now that Ben Johnson said that Bongino was at his office today and they said he was happy or not happy, I'm sorry, in a positive mood. And, apparently the Trump team is together and locking in and getting things done. So, but the one name that I'm not seeing here is there's nothing about Kash Patel. And it was making it seem like Kash Patel was pretty unhappy as well. So take that for what it's worth, I guess. Hopefully we can get something out of this. There was 7,000 people at the Turning Point conference, which is a decent size. So hopefully that, that pressure did work and it did its job, because that's essentially what they call, democracy. Our people put pressure, we get some kind of answer, they are now starting to ship weapons to Ukraine again. I don't know if I'm 1,000% in favor of that. I'm not even necessarily against the federal firings that have been getting approved, if you want to call it, by the Supreme Court. I just think they should have been done a little bit more in phases because you got to reorganize processes, right? Things got to be, whether you're keeping it in the federal government, putting it back to the states, these things have to be like realigned, right? You got to have some kind of working process because even if you don't feel the federal government should be in the business of doing some of these things, the states still have to maintain that because that's the expectation of their citizens. So you have to give them a chance to regroup and figure out a system that works, like a 2-year window, right? That would be huge. But it does not seem that is, they want to do, even Charlie Kirk said, hey, we've got a lot of populist energy in America right now that it's, been funneling towards, the MAGA movement. But don't be fooled. The Democrats, technically, you could still consider it a mess, right? But they do have some rising stars. I don't mind AOC, biggest diehard fan, no, but I think she does represent a part of the party that has a voice and has a block, right? So they got to respect that. But John Fetterman, I think, maybe not him in particular, but something along those lines, I think would really put the Democratic Party back on the map. So it's something that they kind of just don't really have a choice but to do, right? You have to regroup, you have to realign. That's something that they're not doing. I don't know why they did what they did. It doesn't make any sense to me. Why? And it's not a personal attack on Harris. They did her wrong. They did her wrong. But, where I will disagree with Charlie Kirk is, if a mayor does something that's wrong, illegal, and they have to get arrested, that's one thing, right? But I just don't think it's a good idea. He posted on Facebook, I've seen it on July 9th. It's time to start arresting Democrat mayors who are obstructing ICE from doing their work. I get the point behind it, but I don't think it's a good situation to be calling for that on such a huge platform, right? Maybe talk to the administration, something like that. But, that's what people were talking about when they said political targeting, because that's kind of what that represents. Then, okay, granted, yeah, you're going to somebody which you view as committing a crime right now. But they at some point there's a good chance that the Democrats will be reelected at some point, right? And you don't want to give them precedent to come after your circle for something that, is borderline to a degree. There is laws, right? And I'm not saying there isn't a law. There are laws, 1,000%. But sometimes some of this stuff is a little gray and the federal government flip-flops so often, sometimes cities aren't able to respond fast enough. Let's touch on immigration a little bit. The New York Times is saying that, again, they're trying to go after the 15% of illegals worked in agriculture. I get that. But even Kirk had even said something about the Reagan amnesty. And I know a lot of conservatives are against that, but if they're working and, things of that nature, I don't have an issue giving them amnesty to put them on the books, because not only is that person here working illegal, right? But those companies are taking advantage of those workers. And that's something that we cannot lose sight of. These companies are taking advantage of workers, and that depresses your wages, the average American, whether you're Democrat or Republican. Companies taking advantage of an undocumented worker pushes your wages down, lowers your standard of living. So yes, let's get some of these people on the payrolls because it will up your standard of living. So that's that's just a little tidbit from me, I guess, if you want to call it that. Kind of going a little further. I did a really, really good podcast the other day with Josh Lewis, and he's Saving the Elephants. Great guy. We had some good thing. He's definitely a little bit more of the traditional conservative. I'm a cross between MAGA and traditional and a Democrat, if you want to say that. We do got on the, I'm sorry, on the 10th, we have dropping is an episode with Derek Henderson. He's the author of Learning to Be Me, Lessons and Perspectives. Great book, even greater guy. I mean, had a great time recording with him. Such a friendly person, makes you feel welcome. And then, one of our biggest episodes to date that I'm really, really pumped about is the one with Brent. He's a former CIA counterterrorism analyst, and now he's on Substack. Check him out. He's the author of Sleeping Giant. We talk about ISIS a little bit. We talk about the Middle East, our varying views on the policy and how those things impact it. And, he does have some stuff, where he has things viewed a certain kind of way too, right? So, it dives into it. There's definitely some perspectives that maybe I would not have thought of before. And, he's a phenomenal guy, phenomenal host. Everything about him is good. Not a host, I'm sorry, phenomenal guest. And the goal is to have him on here on a regular basis. That is our target. So Brent, we definitely want to have you back on, because that'll be phenomenal. It'll just be phenomenal if we're able to have you back on. We also got, yesterday, the podcast with David Beckmeyer came out. That was great too. On Friday, we had the 11th. We had Alan Hollis on here. But don't forget, with the one that was really big for us so far is Dr. Glenn Toby of TEDx Talk. Great guy, great story, great background. He's done some crazy work with great people, and he was just a good guy. Roger Friedman, I did a great episode with him. So check out some of these other episodes. Download it, like, share. We're on Facebook. We're on all the major podcast sites. It'll help us out. Gets us more attention. Help us get some bigger guests over time. And bigger guests, we'll get more, right? And, hopefully we can get some more influential names to really push some things. So, again, this is your Tuesday morning quick news break. I hope to catch everybody doing well. Have a great Tuesday. Stay safe. Be kind to one another. Remember, we all live on the same planet and we walk on the same dirt. Hope everybody has a good day.